guys, so today I'm going to be doing my March wrap-up video. Oh my god, can you believe it's already April? Time is passing so quickly, it is cray. But without further ado, here are the books I read in March. The first book I read this month was All Our Yesterdays by Kristin Terrell, and I had been wanting to read this book for a really long time, and I'm super glad I did because I thought it was amazing. This book follows the story of Em, who keeps waking up in the same cell with instructions taped to the bottom of like a drain, telling her how to escape. And the weird thing is that the note is written in her own handwriting, but she doesn't remember ever writing it. Basically, her task is to prevent the invention of a time-traveling device that has led to her being locked in a cell. There's also a second storyline following Marina, whose best friend James is in a lot of trouble, and the storylines intercede at some point, and it's just so amazingly well written, it blows my mind. The time travel aspect of it is not very well fleshed out, I have to say. It kind of has a lot of things where like, this doesn't make sense at all. But you know, I didn't read this book for the science fiction part of it. I read it for the story and for the characters, and it's amazing. If you want to read it for that reason, go for it because it's wonderful. The next book I read was finally Ignite Me by Tahereh Mafi, the final book in the Shatter Me trilogy. When I started off reading the series a few months ago with Shatter Me, I was feeling really ambivalent about it because I wasn't sure if I liked it or not. There were some parts to it that I adored, other parts were like, oh my god, what? But I felt like this whole series just got better with every book. So if you read Shatter Me and you were not quite convinced that that was the book for you, I'd say just keep reading because it does get better. I thought that Ignite Me was a really good final installment, except for the ending. The ending was just a kind of 3-page wrap-up, basically. It felt like the author just kind of got bored with it and was like, I need to finish this book now, so I better just write whatever to just make it a happy ending. Because, you know. But as so many others have said before me in what was probably a much more eloquent way, this is not a book you read for the story. This is a book you read for the characters and the character development, and that is something that is very much present in this story. I loved the development of Juliet over the course of the 3 books because she finally turned into a badass heroine at the ending. She changed a lot. The only thing besides the ending that I would criticize is the way Warner was like toned down so much just to kind of please the masses, because at the beginning of the series he's portrayed as this really cruel person, and in the end it's just like, oh no, he did that, he had good reasons, and he didn't actually ever do any of that. Pretty much. Not quite, but pretty much. I was like, why? Just let the bad guy be a bad guy. You know, everybody has lovable qualities, and you don't need to make a character a saint for him to be able to find someone who loves him. And I just think that was kind of meh. Other than that, I thought the series was pretty amazing, and it is very addictive and really hard to put down. The next book I read this month is As You Like It by William Shakespeare. It is a play, and it is really funny and awesome. This is the first thing I've ever read by Shakespeare, which is a tragedy, but finally I've made him one of my authors that I've read, which is awesome. And I thought this As You Like It is amazing, it's hilarious, it is witty, and it is very short. What I consider one of my greatest achievements this month is that I finally made John Green one of my read authors. Yes. Are you proud of me? Because you should be. Because no, you shouldn't. It's just, it's a shame that I had never read anything by him before. But now I finally read Looking for Alaska, and I thought it was amazing. Like, seriously amazing. I had been witness to the hype about John Green for a very long time, and I felt like, okay, maybe people just hype him up because he's so famous on YouTube, and obviously all of his fans are kind of prone to like his writing, at least the majority of them. But that's not the whole truth. Like, that's not the whole reason that he is such an acclaimed author. It's also that he's just really wonderful. And I loved his style of writing. I loved his way of storytelling. I thought he was very relatable. The ending is very sad. I didn't see that coming for a very long time. I did just towards the end, but before I was like, please no. Nah, no, why? No. But it's really good. And if you have never read anything by John Green before, totally recommend this. I will be reading some of his other works, I hope, in the near future, because I just think he's amazing and he writes amazingly, and there's too much amazingness going on here for me to just keep ignoring it. From John Green, we moved on to another author I had not previously read, and that is Neil Gaiman. And I read The Ocean at the End of the Lane, which was also super hyped up, I believe, by people last year, and I thought I need to read this as well. So first I'd like to say that I did enjoy this book. I thought it was interesting. It was an interesting concept. It was almost like a fairy tale, like a modern fairy tale. The only thing is that I kind of didn't feel like there was much of a point to it. That sounds really mean now, but I feel like, especially with fairy tales, maybe it's just me, maybe I'm the only one who read this as a fairy tale, but I felt like there should be some sort of a point that the author is getting at, like a moral of the story maybe, or maybe that's just too much to ask. I don't know. I wasn't quite convinced by it, let's put it that way. But other than that, I thought it read pretty well and I enjoyed it overall. The next book I finished this month is Red Seas Under Red Skies by Scott Lynch, which is the sequel to The Lies of Locke Lamora, which is one of my favorite books ever. I had actually picked up this book, I think last fall at some point, and read about not even half of it, and then for some reason I stopped, which is a shame because it's really cool, and I am so happy that I finally read it and finished it. And it's just so well written. I just adore Scott Lynch. He comes up with the most intricate and just complex cons that seem like he thought ahead so far, and then there's like cons within cons within cons, and the lies, it's just a web of lies, and to just even imagine all of that, it's ridiculous to me. And I just adore Locke Lamora as a main character. I also love Sean, and I just love all the characters pretty much, and it's just a really great story. I'm just over the moon happy that there will be altogether 7 books in this series of Locke Lamora stories, and the 3rd one came out last fall, so I'm hoping I can pick it up soon and continue reading the story because it's just so wonderful, and I can't wait to see what else Scott Lynch can come up with, because he, in my opinion, is just a genius. Pretty much. Straight up genius. In the spirit of finishing books I had already started previously and then put down again, I also read Steel's Edge by Ilona Andrews, which is the final book in the The Edge series. It's a fantasy story kind of set in a world where there is 2 versions basically of our world. One is non-magical and one is magical, and then there's the edge, which is like a little space in between. That's kind of the border. These books have been kind of guilty pleasure books for me because they're pretty much just straight up romance fantasy, and there's not much substance to them, but I still find them enjoyable. And all 4 books of this series are about 2 different protagonists that fall in love, pretty much. That's like the main thing here, and they're all somehow related and know each other, and they're all somehow beautiful, so I can't imagine them at a family reunion, just everybody glamour models, all super rich and fancy and like super in love with the perfect relationships and the perfect life. Yeah, I don't know. I just find the books really fun to read, and they're really quick reads as well. Then, because of the nice, beautiful weather, which is not the case today, but usually lately, fortunately, so many Lee words in that sentence. I'm not sure that's grammatically correct. Anyway, the next book I read is Sophie Kinsella's Can You Keep a Secret? Because it was like romance and contemporary. Give me all of that, please. But I thought this book was really fun. I thought the protagonist was a complete dumbass, but that's usually the case with like girly chick flick books. But I have to say I love Sophie Kinsella because she always writes about like size 14 to 16 British Londoners who are like kind of quirky and strange, but also really clingy and not very feminist. But that's okay. That's okay. every now and again that is okay. I just think her books are hilarious, and I mean, as long as it makes you laugh out loud sometimes, it's fine. And then the last book I read is pretty much the biggest contrast ever to Sophie Kinsella, because it is Dark Places by Gillian Flynn. Or is it Gillian? I've heard people pronounce it as Gillian, but I have always pronounced it as Gillian, so now that is what I say. If it's wrong, then just don't care. Dark Places is the second book I read by Gillian Flynn. The first was Gone Girl, which blew my mind. I'll link my Gone Girl book talk down below if you want to check it out. It has a lot of spoilers in it, so please only watch it if you have read Gone Girl, but I just had to like put all my thoughts into words because Gone Girl pretty much just fucking blew my mind completely. That, unfortunately, isn't quite true for Dark Places. I still thought it was a good book and well written. It's just that I was missing the plot twists and kind of mind fucks that to me were such an integral part of Gone Girl, and that made that book so incredibly special. As the title suggests, it was a very dark book and a lot of shit happens to the characters in it, and you're just like, oh my god, thank the Lord for my life that it's not like the protagonists, because I think I would just shoot myself, pretty much. The book follows Libby Day, who is the main survivor of a massacre where her brother allegedly killed all of her family except for her. She was only 7 years old when it happened, and now I think it's 20 years later or something, and she is finally kind of trying to piece together the truth and find out what actually happened. And it is quite, it's not scary, it's definitely not scary, and it also just doesn't leave you with that kind of, I don't know, eerie feeling that I felt when reading Gone Girl. It's still a good book, just not as good as I think Gillian Flynn could have made it. So that's it, you guys, for all the books I read in March. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you read any of the books I mentioned, please leave a comment down below telling me what you thought of them. And have a lovely week. I'm gonna see you soon. Bye! And it's just that I was kind of missing the plot twists and mind fucks that were, to me, the integral part of Gone Girl, and that made it. Fuck you! You just ruined everything.